Well, for more on the humanitarian crisis, we're joined now by Tommaso Della Longa, spokesperson for the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies. Tommaso, thanks so much for being with us again on the programme this evening. We saw more horrific images from Gaza there in that report, more attempts to get aid into the territory by means of this latest attempt by aid flotilla. What is the actual situation on the ground there in terms of humanitarian needs?
Well, first of all, thanks, Sharon, for having me again tonight. The humanitarian situation is just deteriorating, getting worse by the minute. Sadly, there is no positive news when we're talking about Gaza in the last 21 months, if you take away the few weeks for a month of this last ceasefire. At the moment, there is enormous shortage of everything. Palestine Red Crescent colleagues just closed another clinic the last 8th of July in Gaza City, and now more than half of the health posts and clinics are closed, ceased operation, because they don't have fuel, they don't have medicine, they don't have any more medical equipment, and the situation is worse not only for health but also for access to food, water. There is no water sanitation, and on top of everything, to add another layer of suffering, there is the heat of summer. And heat of summer, when you're living under a makeshift plastic tent, and you don't know how to bring water to your kids, it just makes everything a nightmare.
And Tom, so sadly you've lost another volunteer in Gaza today, being International Volunteer Day also. Talk to us a little bit about how difficult it is for people who are volunteering to work in Gaza.
It's almost impossible, and I think that this is the icon of the resilience and the strength of the women and men, nurses, doctors, ambulance driver, humanitarian colleagues, who really, after almost 2 years of conflict, are still doing their utmost to serve their communities. They are embedding their communities. They are suffering exactly the same equally as their communities. I mean, we were talking with colleagues who don't have where to take a shower or to wash their vest before starting a shift in their ambulance. And I cannot forget the words of one of the volunteers that were killed in the famous incident, sadly famous incident of the 15 humanitarian workers killed and then buried in a mass grave. And his last words recorded on a video were, "Forgive me, Mom, I just choose to save and help the others." And no one should risk his or her life to save the other lives. And this is sadly the daily life of humanitarian workers in Gaza.
Yeah, and we heard again from Antonio Guterres, again calling for a ceasefire. Efforts to reach one have stalled again, warning that the humanitarian crisis has reached horrific proportions, as he put it, and calling for the world not to let what's happening to Palestinians be overshadowed. What is your message to the world? Because these people, this conflict is being overshadowed right now. As we saw in that report, people in Gaza feeling that they're simply being ignored.
Well, I cannot blame the people in Gaza to say this, because actually the feeling of being ignored, and what we hear from Palestine Red Crescent colleagues, has been the same for solid 2 years now, almost 2 years now. The difference is that it's not anymore an headline as it was, but still in the last months, nothing has changed. Humanitarian aid is not entering. There is no safety for civilians, no safety for humanitarian workers, and there is not really a proper humanitarian operation. The only change is the health system has collapsed. Finding a kilo of flour could cost almost 25 euro in a situation that it's very difficult, and even water is almost impossible to find. So the message, sadly, is still the same. It's not changing, and this is a biggest frustration for all the humanitarian sector. We need the conflict to stop. We need to have humanitarian safe and unhindered humanitarian access all across Gaza Strip. We need to put in place the entrance of humanitarian aid at scale. We need to immediately release all the hostages, and of course we need the protection of civilians. It's simply incredible and horrific that a family needs the risk to lost their lives just to find some food or water for their beloved. This is no human being should risk his life to find food and water for their beloved.
And Tommaso, in the last week or so, we've been hearing about these Israeli proposals to set up a so-called humanitarian city on the ruins of what once was Rafah in southern Gaza. What kind of ethical concerns and legal concerns would your organisation have about that?
Well, we have been listening a lot of different reports about, as we know, the new humanitarian mechanism of entrance of aid. Then now this thing that you just mentioned is very difficult to comment on something that we didn't see. The basic line is that people needs to be protected and respected wherever they are. If they move, if they decided not to move, maybe they also cannot move if you think about people with disability, elderly people, or people that simply don't want to leave their own community and houses even if they are in ruin. So there is no possibility to force people in a place. This is simply not acceptable. And then we will see what will happen in the next coming weeks. But first and foremost, humanitarian aid needs to enter, humanitarian operation needs to be able to done at scale, and humanitarians and civilians must be protected. This is the basic for any kind of discussion.
Tommaso, thanks for being with us. We'll have to leave it there for now. That is Tommaso Della Longa, spokesperson for the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.